In this video, I decided to make a Bluetooth speaker out of some scrap wood and parts I bought off of Amazon. I figured the best wood for this would be some maple and cherry, so I dipped into my stash. Once I grabbed the pieces I liked, next up was the electronics. What you'll need for this build is two 50-watt car speakers, a 25-watt Bluetooth amp, a power supply, and some speaker cable. The first thing I did was to use my router to cut a dado in the cherry that will be the walls of the speaker. Once that was cut, I then needed to mark where I was going to cut the two long sides and the two short sides. I then used my miter saw to cut two 45-degree angles on each piece. So now I have 4 pieces with a funky groove running through each piece. I then ripped the maple to width and cut it to length. This piece is going to be where I mount the speakers. Next I used a hole saw to cut two 3-inch holes in the board where the speakers will go. Warning, using a hole saw produces the worst noise ever, so I replaced the audio with something a little bit better. After that, I sanded down the burr that the hole saw made. I then used my roundover bit in my router to give the holes a nicer look to them. I then used a small drum sander attached to my drill press to smooth out the insides of the holes. Once that was done, it was time to align the speakers and mark where the screws were going to go. Next I used a small drill bit to pre-drill the holes for the screws. I hand tightened the screws just to make sure I didn't over-tighten them and crack the wood. I then repeated the steps for the other speaker. So far so good, the speakers fit nicely into the holes. The next step was glue up. I arranged the pieces on top of the blue tape so when it was ready to glue, I could use the tape as a clamp. I aligned 3 pieces together, keeping the top open so I could slide the speaker piece in. I then glued both sides of the top piece and tightened it up with the tape. To be honest, the miters didn't perfectly line up, so I used some glue and some cherry sawdust and filled the small spaces where the wood didn't line up. This way, you look like you know what you're doing. After it was dry, I then used my rabbiting router bit to carve a space where the back piece would sit flush. Next it was time to sand down the whole box and all the dried glue. Here my wife falls in love with the newly sanded speaker. She's weird. I then give the rabbit a sanding so the back piece fits in nice and even. So, I told a guy at work about the build, and he knows way more about audio than I do, and had some advice for me for making the speaker sound better. What you're about to see is exactly the way it happened at work. I swear.
Okay, so you start with the Bluetooth device, right? You got the box, okay? You got speakers, all your wiring. Okay,
Yeah.
that's set. Now your next step is you want to do.
In a bass reflex system, it's really about an ideal low pass filter that yields its rate response is a rectangular function. It's a rectangular function. It's also a transition region. It's a transition region. It's a rectangular function. It does not exist in the frequency of low power. An ideal low power resolution. And theoretically, my multiple function is in the frequency domain or equivalent domain or evolution happens in evolution. There's also however, the ideal response do have response to having so Chapman needs to be approximately an ideal low pass filter, an ideal low pass and theoretically my motion.
Hey, whoa, dude, buddy, just put a little MDF in the middle. That's all you need to do.
Oh.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all I had to say.
No, that's
okay,
it.
cool.
You okay, buddy?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, yeah, sure.
So basically, he recommended that I cut a piece of MDF and use it as a separator for each speaker. So I measured the width of the speaker and marked it on the MDF. Threw it on the miter saw and cut it to size. I then measured the depth of the box, marked it on the MDF, and cut it to the proper depth. There it is. Fingers crossed it fits. I then used my hot glue gun and glued the MDF into place. After that, I ripped and cut a piece of maple for the back piece of the speaker. Cut it on the miter saw, and then it was off to the belt sander for some fine tuning. I first rounded over the edges of the board, and I kept taking small passes with the sander and went back and forth so I could achieve the tightest fit possible for the back piece. Once I was happy with that, it was time to run it through my planer so I could get the proper thickness so it would fit flush in the rabbet. Next, I needed to drill out a hole for the female end of the wire so I could plug the male end of the power supply into it. Stop giggling. After that, I drilled some portholes in the wood for better bass response from the speakers. At least that's what the guy at work told me to do. No. Like before, I used a round-over bit to make the portholes a little more classy looking. I then sanded down the back with 220 grit sandpaper to make it nice and smooth. I grabbed some speaker cloth I had and cut out 2 squares of fabric for each hole. I took my hot glue gun and glued the pieces over each hole in the wood. I didn't care how messy it looked, as you'd never see it once it was all glued up. See, it looks okay from the outside, you trolls. After that, I hot glued the wires and power supply just in case. Again, I wasn't too worried about making it super neat. It's in there secure, and that's what matters the most. I also glued up the power cable so it wouldn't get pulled out accidentally. I then carved out some notches in the MDF for the power cable to run through for the sake of cable management. Once I double checked everything, I hot glued the last of the wiring in place. Now, it was time for the glue up. I ran a good amount of glue around the rabbet, spread it out, and put the back on. Then clamp that motherfucker up. After waiting 24 hours, it was time to take the clamps off. After that, I went and grabbed my super sweet stamp to make the build official. The final step was to finish the box with some Danish oil. Don't drink the oil, this is a joke. I ended up putting 3 coats of Danish oil on it and calling this build officially done. So here it is, the Bluetooth speaker. I really like the way it came out. I really like the combination of the maple and cherry. I think it's real classy, just like me. It didn't cost more than 30 bucks between the Bluetooth amp and the speakers. I had the speaker cable laying around and the wood was from my scrap wood, so it really didn't cost me much. All the parts will be in the description down below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out. And for all of you who haven't, hit the little bell notification every time you want to get notified when I drop a new video. That would be awesome. Thanks for watching. See you next time. This is my favorite part of the whole build, is when you plug the power into the speaker. Take a listen.
The Bluetooth device is ready to pair.
And now when you actually connect it to your phone.
The Bluetooth device is connected successfully.